Pigdin Demwengu. Listen in.
I present myself as a progressive Pan-African, committed to building a stronger, unified Africa. This letter serves as an initial step in engaging with the broader Pan-African community, the AU Youth Council, Pan-African institutions, regional economic blocs, and media outlets. You say the application is not just about myself, but about amplifying the voices of all Africans, especially the progressive Pan-Africans, youth and marginalized communities, believes in building a collective power through collaboration. So, Your Excellency, I kindly request that the State House of Kenya consider my candidature without discrimination. I seek your support and that of our great nation as I embark on this journey to serve our continent. My commitment to the ideals of Pan-Africanism, the spirits of our founding Pan-Africans, and my unwavering dedication to the AU's vision and mission drive me forward.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking forward to the opportunity to discuss the vision further with him.
So you want to be AU Commission chairperson?
Yes.
So you can drive this agenda?
Yes.
And you say, well, some of these qualifications that have been put there for this position are completely discriminatory, and they therefore just creating this position be an elitist position.
Yes.
Even the people who will be voting for the person who becomes AU Commission chairperson do not meet these qualifications.
Yes.
On education alone,
Yes.
not many presidents in Africa have a PhD or a master's degree. And yet they'll be voting for somebody and they say that that person must have a PhD or a master's degree, PhD added advantage and all those things. All right. So why do you think that this is the best route for you to achieve this agenda?
You see, there has been actually, I'll say, more of disappointment to some of Africans who feel that the AU has actually not met its goal. And some have even discussing whether we should have an alternative AU, or is it time now to change AU as it was changed from OAU to something else. But I still believe that it has existing structures that if it gets now the progressive people inside, then we can be able to push it. Because it's a matter of, and when I give a time frame like 10 years, it's actually political goodwill. The president the other time just said that we will remove visa. It never took 63 years to remove visa. And if it was to be actually realistic enough, we could not have any visa anywhere. So some of these actually problems you're having just pronouncement. So you can't see how the pronouncement takes over 50 years just to make a pronouncement. So I feel that with the setup of AU, if we can just change and get, in Pan-African space, you have three Pan-Africans. You have the liberal conservatives and progressive Pan-Africans. The progressive Pan-Africans actually look beyond, not their class. And if you can have progressive Pan-Africans inside these, we can drive it where it's supposed to be. Of course, I actually still share my feeling that all those have checked the history of those who have been chairpersons of AU at the end of the day since 2002. Most of them, of course, have that degree and masters. But that has still not made us achieve this. In fact, in their degrees and their masters, they still envision that we can achieve it in 50 years, which is actually unrealistic to me. So I really feel that there need to be a space so that we talk about the Africa within that setup. Because it was founded from OAU, and you see, by then in 1963, they were so convinced that we could attain unity now.
It was Organization of African
It
Unity.
was even unity,
Yes.
which was now changed to a union.
Yeah.
You see? And actually, they justified that they changed it to a union to now focus on economics and social aspect. But they forgot about the liberation of Africa. And that's why even today, they either call it Africa Day instead of Africa Liberation Day. The liberation is still going on.
One of the things that I've always found interesting when I'm looking at the topic and subject of unification, I look at countries that achieved it. If we're talking about the 19th century, two countries, very huge countries in Europe, were exactly what we are here. Italy, Germany. Little provinces, everybody doing their own thing, kings and princes and all over the place. Now I look at Italy, the gentleman called Garibaldi, a revolutionary general, was among the people who was key in bringing Italy together until it became a kingdom. Okay? And that happened in 1871. Then you look at Germany. There's a Prussian prince, a duke actually, Otto von Bismarck, did the same thing with Germany, knocked people's heads together, they came together. Now, if I look at the time when they began their quests, when those countries were unified, and then I look at what then became the EU, okay? For Germany, it was 122 years from that point to the time the EU was formed, bringing Europe. For Italy, it was 132 years, meaning a century had to go by all these attempts at let's unify, let's do this, until eventually. But I mention this because those countries that were unifying as under the EU flag were already unified. There are things they had agreed on. Now, if you look at our own timetable, we must start somewhere, and what you're doing is a good start. What are the steps that we must follow to show that we're actually getting there? I see us struggling with the East African community. It's a good step. But from where you sit, you're the one who's done the research, you've done the thinking. Mm-hmm. What are these things that we need to see to understand that the unification is getting closer and closer, even if it's just baby steps?
You see, thank you for those good citations, for those examples. But you also check at the Americans. When they struggled to have the United States of America, it was never United States.
Nope.
It was the Civil War that even actually resulted to the unity. Yep. In fact, they struggled, they fought for their unity.
They did, among themselves.
Yeah.
First of all, they fought the British.
Yes. Then
fought the French.
Then they fought for their
unity.
Among themselves.
Massacred the native communities, the Native Americans, and then proceeded to fight among themselves.
Now, if you also go to an example of a colonized territory that was colonized like India, even after colonization, they still retain their India. Look at the unity of China. You see? And you see, when you measure our population, we can only measure our population in regards to something like India or China. We cannot measure our population in line with the US, which is around 350 million, you see. So realistically is that since there were two school of thoughts, the Casablanca one and the Monrovia one, during the 1963, there's a school of thought that insisted that we start by unity now. But there's a school of thought that insisted that let's first of all go to countries. Then we now come to regions, then we'll be back to where we are supposed to be. And this was led, of course, with the part of Julius Nyerere, which actually he admits later over 10 years that it took him over 10 years to actually understand what Nkrumah meant by us going the one direction. If you check now over the 60 years that we went to countries and even where we are today, you realize that even that so-called unity has not attained actual unity in terms of our peace and stability. Because the key issue for you to unite is your welfare. You are uniting to improve your welfare, to improve your peace and your economic well-being. You don't just unite for the purpose you are uniting and there's nothing you're eating. So unity is actually to preserve your development. Now look at the East African community that has united. How has it advanced the development of East Africa community? You see? Now Somalia is coming in and DR Congo are here. And you realize that we are still fighting for the same resources in one side. There's a country interested to get the resources from the other side through some people, you see? And even in this aspect, we have not actually totally liberated ourselves. Because even in Kenya, as we are moving to East African community, we are opening up for Europe, for US with the treaty deals. We are giving our resources like the tallow oil for the other countries, you see. Unity was actually to use whatever you have within your territory, which is below our land. Because the struggle for Africa is what is below our land and above our land. But we have not even used it in our unity. So I don't think that the so-called the regional blockings will actually lead us to all African unity for some time. So you see, the likes of Akan Traore are even now walking out of that regional outfit. They are saying we are out of ECOWAS. So they are clearly meaning that this ECOWAS and this regional bloc are not even meant to lead us towards the total unity of Africa. They're actually just meant to be the cocoons to monitor you and still being used by the West. So that is the biggest problem. So I think that we should not still entertain that the regional bloc will lead us to unity. We should just assume and not assume, even accept that you have to go straight direction. Let's unite.
Into one united Africa.
Straight to it.
Why is it important that we have a united Africa?
Now, the reason why it will be important is that when you have one united Africa, one, you will do away with these wars of the so-called countries fighting, the Berlin Wall wars, the Ambazonia and the Cameroon thing, the Congo thing, you see? When one country want to cross over because of a border. Two, you'll open up Africa for free movement, as we say, free movement of everything else, you see, both goods and people, you see. Three, you can actually decide from the continental level that now the resources of Africa will not continue to be exploited as being exploited through either, let me go talk with the President Ruto, I'll get access to their land, I'll use their oil. You have now to go through a unified common front. And the last thing is that it gives us more bargaining power even as we interact with the rest of the world, you see. When you want to go maybe for EU deal, is Africa with its population going to discuss with the EU? You see, is Africa, its population going to discuss with China? Not all African head of state seated in China to discuss with one country, China, vis-a-vis 55 presidents, you see. Not all Africa are going to maybe US to sit down to discuss with one country. So we actually will get a better advantage in terms of even negotiation with the external world, the continents, in terms of the numbers, the power we have in our numbers. And then we'll have security of our resources.
Is it feasible? Is it feasible to actually have a united Africa, united in all those things that we've talked about? Apart from the fact that we are black and we have these high levels of melanin, and then we have the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Mediterranean, which puts our laws in one piece of land. What else is going on?
You see,
What is this that would make us feel we are truly united? We are one. Are we?
few things. Let's start first of all by even if you have to have one passport or one ID of all Africa as a unification. Like now we are all Kenyans with one ID. You call yourself a Kenyan because you have one ID. You can have one African ID instead of these small IDs. You are one. If you can speak one African language. Because even you don't have any way how we can hide our secrets from them because I have to speak their English. So there's no way I can hide any of my secrets from them, you see. But if you can, all Africa, you move to Tanzania, you move to Ghana, you can speak Swahili and you're together, or Yoruba, all over the African, and you're together. If you can have one same currency, now you have to move there, change it to another thing else, and even change it to dollars, which is not even African thing, backed by our gold, which they don't have there, they have it from here. So you see, all those are the physical characteristics of our unity. Because now, it's very clear. The land and you move all over. You move from here, is another plus to whatever, is plus whatever. The currency you move from plus whatever, the ID is plus. It's totally different things. So if you can first of all start by those physical things, before even we move to what they call the total political unity, if we can just abolish all these small things and have one united things, like one document for passport, one document for ID, one language all over Africa, then that is the progress towards unity, not one regional bloc for another regional bloc. It doesn't lead us to anywhere.
I can see the ideal. And the ideal on paper sounds very good. It's doable.
Yes.
But do you see the people of Africa actually getting there?
I don't see the elites of Africa getting there, not the people of Africa.
The people of Africa, the you and I,
You see,
Pidgin Odimwengu and some Pidgin guy who's in West Africa.
I really aspire to go to Ghana and have their passport, or have one African passport in Ghana, speak Swahili with them. And I don't think that being more of a paper thing. It's something that I feel is possible. If today we are to start a program, for example, in language, and teach the whole Africa in the next 10 years Swahili, or even if it's Yoruba, we'll all be speaking one language. You see? Even if you start by this younger generation, in the next 20 years, they'll be united. It's not actually not possible. It's something possible. They brought their English, then actually we took away our traditional language, then carried their language. And it became possible for them. You see? We united from our small kingdoms, or whatever called kingdoms and clans, to a country. It was still possible for us, you see? So I don't think that the unification of Africa is still elusive. As I'm saying, the 2063 is actually elusive to me, you see? I don't think that our unity is still elusive. It's possible if we have the political goodwill and if we have the commitment. The only thing that makes it that way is because the majority of people we have, especially those whom we leave to decide this position and these decisions as top leaders, are still not actually looking inward to the African potential, but they aspire even to be in the West. That's why they want to go stay in the West. They have a house somewhere. They want to take their kids somewhere. So they are here tentatively by body, but the spirit is out.
I always hear people talk about speaking this foreign language which we're speaking now as though it's a negative thing. Is it really necessarily a negative thing? In the same way that it is used as a tool for colonization, but are there not advantages we have in being able to speak and understand this language as well?
No, it has played an advantage. It has been able up now to unite us.
Have we exploited, thank you, have we exploited the advantages that this language affords us as much as we can? Because remember, this is a language that is probably the most spoken on the planet. This one.
It's true.
Okay? So what I'm trying to say is, if you focus on what already unites us, and what we already have and how we can build on it as we look at the other ways of building in on this. See, there's an advantage African countries have if you are colonized in this. Very many of your citizens will speak more than one language.
Yes.
Whether they like it or not, they will speak more than one language. Yes. In Kenya, you'll probably speak 3. And it's normal. Now, in the West, most of them just speak one language. 1, not even 2. When you speak 2 languages, it's considered a big thing. Now, do you know what that does to your mind? Just the dexterity of moving words and languages in your brain. It actually makes your brain that much better, that much more versatile, that much stronger. So we have many advantages that we lose when we whine and complain about the problems we've had from colonization. As we whine and complain about it, we're entrenching it. Instead of saying, okay, it happened, okay, we've got that one. Now, can we now focus and talk about the very things that you're talking about? But then, see, if you look at me carefully, You will see I'm not young.
Carefully.
Yes. How many people of your generation who, when I look at you, are clearly young, believe what you're saying and support it?
No, that's actually the biggest. That's the biggest space we have here that we must fill. That all conversations of actually the younger generations have not actually been brought up to this speed. You see, the older generation having experienced that maybe it failed, were not willing enough to pass it to the younger generation based on the experience of his failure. You see, and there's a time, that's why I'm saying the younger generation, even when I present my position on this, is a wake-up call to the younger generation to start thinking of how do we move beyond the small party within your community, to think of how do we take over Africa, or how do we unite Africa as younger generation, you see? Because even when this struggle for climate became more successful, it moved to even a younger generation, see? Somebody is a climate champion in nursery or in class 1, you see? And these are even the reparation struggle. Many young Africans don't even know what is the reparation or why should we have it, you see? But the people who have the information have not passed it. So I come in this space actually to also make it like a wake-up call for the younger people. We need to think beyond this, because the younger people have the potential. You see, this technology and the advancement they brought to us is actually a tool we must use to unite ourselves, you see. If I have to teach now Swahili, I'm teaching it from English to Swahili, you see. So I still have the advantage of using their language to teach our fellow Africans who don't understand my Swahili, so that they can get the Swahili we unite for the Africa, you see. So we still have to use this. Look at the potential we have in technology. We can unite all over the African, you see. But our younger people are still not in the space of using technology for the purpose of unity. It's technology for show marks, technology for whatever else, technology for something else, you see, without looking inward. Of course, there are so many people who are trying to now bring Afrocentric spacing or Afrocentric thinking in regards even of technology and education and everything else. So the gap is here within the younger generation. And there must be actually serious effort to reach out to these people, you see? Serious effort to reach out to these people. That's what you call Sakara call it political orientation, or the mass awakening. They need to go to the masses. As of course, still Nkrumah said that the revolution must be won by the masses. Until it goes to the masses, it doesn't have any future, you see? So it's the struggle to push it to the masses. But it has remained in the corridors of some boardrooms being discussed somewhere. And that's why the majority of Africans even don't think that it's something that's out there to make any sense to them. And that's the space you're coming in.
I want to go back to the stuff of unification. And I think it is extremely important. We can talk about the need for unification, but I think we need to look at what's happening within those units. In as much as the Balkanization of Africa happened, whereby people who had come from living together in the same space as communities then was separated. Yes. We understand that. However, as a result of that, we saw that these places or these areas which eventually became nation states then had leaders. And the aspiration was to get to a place where development occurred, the livelihoods of people were protected and then sustained over time. Unfortunately, the story for many African nations today is that the development index has remained premature. It has not gone anywhere. In some, it has progressed to a certain extent in others. Can you have a unified continent? Because we're talking about unification of people, we're talking about easy access of trade, we're talking about the opening of borders, we're talking about the livelihoods of people. Can you have one healthy, unified continent if the units are not healthy?
Thank you. Really, as I'd said before, the reason for unity is still for the welfare of the units. You see? But what has made the units not healthy? The leaders are actually from the same units. They're not foreigners. Of course, they know white men who are now controlling Africa like presidents. But they use the blacks to control Africa in another way possible. You see? It is very hard. And that's why I say the fundamentals for the unity of Africa still also lies with the people. These units. But if you check, there's possibility of units or so-called communities to develop. There's possibility. It's something that what's lack is that I still call it political will. There's possibility. Look at, for example, how much you spent to either MCAs or let me say, for example, the so-called CDF or members of parliament for the last maybe 10 years. How much is it? For only that constituency, if that money was actually targeting to help the people there and being used for the people, for the last 10 years you've been giving a member of parliament around 100 million, could that not actually advance their welfare? So we cannot actually sometimes say that it is very difficult to develop the people. It's the mindset of the leaders who are there. They are not actually using the resources for the benefit of those people. Look, for example, the budgeting we've been doing since 1963. If you count it in terms of trillions, and you still wonder we still don't have roads somewhere, you wonder, do you want to say that it is now impossible that even those trillions could not lead to any development? So we cannot move further to that direction. The reality is that we have the potential. It's just the will that is missing. The will that is missing. Today is 3 trillion or 4 trillion. Count it for 10 years. And you still have people who don't have any shelter anywhere, or don't have any road anywhere, or any food anywhere. So how much do we need? But we still have people in the same community who have become billionaires with the same money, who drive and live like, in fact, there are Africans who are richer than the West, very richer than the West. So they got the resources where? Here. They got their money where? Here. They use the money, the resources that were here. The West, as I've told you, actually contributed or listed $1.1 trillion from Africa. So you cannot say that we don't have the resources. I'm saying is the political will. And that's what I'm saying, is the will of the leaders actually to look at the people and say, let me do this for the people. We have the possibility and the potential to do that. Look at even our counties. How much have we been spending to county budgets for the last 10 years? And you want to tell me still counties are still asking for revenue or still asking for more support? 10 years of helping the counties could be enough for them to be independent. But today, they still don't have it. So I'm saying we have the potential to develop or even to unite. The only thing that is missing is the will. And you wonder why these people are not willing. And the reason is because it's not sometimes to their benefit. Because if you tell maybe, for example, the rich person, that let's make everybody rich in this village, they'll be like, hey, if everybody's in our way, will I get more wealth? Somebody told me people are rich because some people are poor. And that's how they became rich. So it's that will that's lacking, the progressiveness of thinking beyond yourself to the people. The liberals and the conservatives have too much of ourselves. That's the problem.
How many progressives are there in Africa? Do you think you have sufficient numbers, like a critical mass that can move this conversation forward?
Yeah, we have so many people speaking. We have so many people who think and don't have the ability or the platform to speak of this. They are there. The only thing that is missing is them to be given the platform to start speaking this direction. There are people meet. Like I'm telling you, my class of philosophy has been meeting for the last 10 years. In fact, I joined them like 3 years ago, and I realized these old men have been meeting, they're Africans, sometimes in the UK, they've been meeting in some hall for the last 10 years discussing the philosophy. And I wonder, why do they read one book forever? And it's just because they want to build their thinking and their understanding in terms of whether the ideal is in position or the material is in position in Africa. And you realize that the problem with Africa is that we were either born idealist or either believing too much of idealism, spirits and ideas. That's why we could pray there for the rain and the corruption to disappear, so that the next day we'll see the country now is now governed. We call for prayers for things that are actually not caused by prayers. Yeah? So we are too much in that side without thinking of our material welfare, our material well-being. And the reason is that when Africans have to be materialists in terms of ideology and think of their material possession, material in terms of matter, what is below our resources, we can get everything else. You see, happiness, everything else, either fulfillment, come from the same thing I call land and the resources we have. But we are out there, I'm not against people praying. We are out there, including a leader who steal, or a leader who loot from you, still pray that God change everything else so that you can have your resources. And the next day you take the same resources that God could have used to help you. So that thinking and that philosophy is what has been lacking. The Africans' unification lacks common ideology and common philosophy.
Even if it's not you, if a progressive became the chairman of the African Union Commission, let's say it's Pitgin Odimwengu or somebody else, do you think that one person would be able to move this conversation?
Yeah, it was.
What do they need?
They need that in-depth awareness, consciousness.
As a person?
Yes, it starts from a person. Sit down, like now we have a conversation here.
So let's say the one person with that awareness,
yes,
like one of your group,
yes,
actually ascends to that position of AU Commission chairperson, then
I'll give you a good analogy of that. They say the gospel started with Jesus or the rest. Some of us never saw him, were never with him, but today we defend him. It started with the one person who has the right will and the mind to sit down with those who are there. Everybody can be converted. Some either convert from their tradition to Christianity or to Islam. But if you have a person who can drive the conversation, it's a matter of sharing thinking that can then build the consciousness and say, Nyewe, this is the direction you need to go. But if that person who can start that conversation is lacking there, then everybody there enjoy their normal traditional chit-chats. I think it's not possible. So we need one person to be in that space who have this thinking. Then start sharing those guys. Because I believe through sharing common direction and building consciousness, we can move to a direction. We defend this. And I'll tell you, the gospel and everything else that was started with one mission.